Good morning, fifth graders. Hello, hello. It is Friday, our last day of our ninth week together. I hope you are doing well. Today, our mathematical lesson is a continuation of everything that we've been learning thus far when it comes to fractions, improper fractions, mixed numbers, adding, subtracting, we're multiplying, we're dividing. You all know math. You've been doing math really since you started to talk. Even before that, you were quantifying numbers. Now we are using all of these skills. We're like layered mathematical onions, if you will, building one layer off of the other. And really, keeping with that onion theme, I've written all of the teaching points that we've been going over this week that we are going to be using today. So before I dive into the teaching points, double check that you have these materials with you, that you have a math notebook or a notebook that is your all-encompassing fifth grade notebook with all of your notes organized. I would really love it if you had your notes from yesterday, particularly the notes on the three-read strategy. You should also have a multiplication chart handy. Many of you have your nameplates from last year. If you don't have a nameplate, there are many other ways that you can either make your own 12 by 12 multiplication chart. You can look it up online. Shout out to Ava and Ava's mom, who I think posted a 12 by 12 chart on Constella for us to use. So once you have all these materials, you are ready. Let's go over our teaching points. Yesterday, I reintroduced the three-read strategy. This is the reason why we're learning the three-read strategy is so that we can understand word problems and know exactly what kind of operation to use. Our second teaching point is I can add and subtract fractions and mix numbers with unlike denominators. Today is our third focus teaching point, where we are going to be using these first two to really understand what it means to turn an improper fraction, turn a mixed number back into an improper fraction, and what is actually happening when we do that. So we are revisiting that same exact problem from yesterday in this like new theme of my favorite no. Say it with me. My favorite no. And yes, this is my favorite wrong answer. And I love learning from mistakes because they make me understand the math even better. And really, yesterday, I was so interested to see who was going to catch the wrong operation. So yesterday we talked about Goldie and Tommy. And we talked about them in the sense that, well, we know that they're sleeping for a certain amount of hours, right? And there's a lot going on here. So let's remind ourselves how to approach this problem using the three-read strategy. Let's remind ourselves of like, how are we going to get ourselves ready to add and subtract, or knowing whether we're adding and subtracting. And then I'm going to teach us an added step as well. Now, this is a lot to look at. Bear with me. Our three-read strategy, over here. This is where the three-read strategy is. It's to the right of me. Here we have our first read strategy. So let's go ahead and read our problem again for the first time. So it's not the first time today. Cindy has 3 cats, Tommy, Sammy, and Goldie. Who are we not talking about right now? We're not talking about Sammy. Sorry, Sammy. We love you, kitty. Not talking about you right now. Each day, Tommy sleeps for 14 and 3/5 hours, and Goldie sleeps for 16 and 3/10 hours. How much longer does Goldie sleep each day? Explain using numbers, diagrams, or words. So that first read, we're focusing just on the story. What's going on? What's the situation? What action or operation do we need? Now, this is really important. We know we're not talking about Sammy. Sammy's out of the picture just for this problem. We know that we are trying to figure out something between these two numbers. Now, this is where my favorite no is. When I think of much longer, I often think, well, if something is much longer, I might be adding. And so yesterday we talked about, okay, we're going to be doing some addition. But I wanted to bring our attention to addition and subtraction language. So look above me. I have this really helpful chart that both talks about, nope, over here. Okay, there we go. We've got subtraction above me, and we have addition above me. What I'm going to do actually is I am going to pull up and zoom in, if you will, on, not on that. So what I would like for us to do, and let's see if you can see this together. Okay, I have some words that I wrote down that relate to addition. Say it with me. Putting together, together, in all, total, all together. Now, these words are thinking, okay, so I want to kind of see if any of these words are found in our equation, because we're stuck on our operation, right? We can't go on to our second read if we don't know what the operation is. And absolutely, we can focus on the quantities and what they represent, but we need to know what operation is expected of us in this word problem. Now, when I look at the word problem, it says, how much longer does Goldie sleep each day? Now, if it said, how many hours does Goldie and Tommy sleep in all, or all together, or in total, that without a doubt would be addition. However, this is much longer, and this is a little tricky. Like, how much longer? Well, let's dive in and take a look at the subtraction part of this. And I'm gonna zoom out. Notice addition is dealing with adding together, sums, more. And this is what kind of tricked us up, is that word more. Whenever I think more, I think addition, and you can give me like a yes, that tricks me all the time. And so this is where we have to ask ourselves, would the answer make sense if we were adding these two together, if we want to know how much longer does Goldie sleep in a day? No, just because we see the word more doesn't necessarily mean that we are adding. So let's take a look at our subtraction words. Really, we're looking at words that are referring to minus, take away, less, fewer, but this is the biggest part of this. We are noticing that there are some comparing words. How much is left? How much more? There it is. There's that more. How much more is there? How much more taller? How much shorter? These are words that are asking us to compare or find the difference between two numbers. So after going through this in detail, this is where I'm recognizing we are not doing addition. The action and operation we're going to need is, in fact, subtraction. So I'm going to go ahead and write subtraction because it's asking us to find the difference between the two. And really, that's the key part of this, my favorite no, is that it is as mathematicians, it's our responsibility to really look deeply in what the problem is asking us. And if you're thinking, okay, if it is going to be addition, what am I adding together? And asking ourselves these, because that's important. So now that we've gone through our 3-read strategy, we're going to approach both of these by using two different strategies. So I'm going to try and squeeze together 2 strategies of solving this equation. So your expectation right now is that you are taking notes and following along at this point. I was not expecting you to take notes on those words. However, if you wanted to make like a word bubble for addition words and subtraction words, absolutely. If you find that being helpful, great. Go for it, run with it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to follow our step by step. Okay? We've done our first read. Our second read is looking at the quantities and what they represent. We know that Tommy sleeps for 14 3/5 hours. This number represents hours slept in a day. Per day. Goldie also, this represents 16 hours and 3/10 per day. Well, first of all, I know what these quantities represent, and I know that I'm trying to find the difference between these two numbers, because our question, once again, looking back on the third read, is we are coming back to what is being asked of us. How much longer does Goldie sleep? How much longer does Goldie sleep each day? And that we have to explain using numbers, diagrams, and words. Or words, excuse me. So now that I've kind of laid out our 3-read strategy, I'm ready to start doing the math. Okay? And so follow along with me. We know that we've got our problem set up, and I'm going to try and be as organized as possible in my math. Now, there's a couple different things I can do here. Many of you know that we need to first, before anything, figure out what our common denominators are. So I'm not going to look at the top. I'm going to look at the denominators. I'm going to look at the bottom numbers. So 5 and 10. Now, immediately, my mind is going off and saying, oh my gosh, these numbers are related. Now, the cool thing is I know in my head that all I need to do is multiply 2 to 5 to get to 10. And there's actually, I don't need to do anything to change Goldie's denominator. So really the only number I'm going to be multiplying by an equivalent fraction is going to be Tommy's. So take a look with me. We have Tommy's 14 3/5, and I need to be able to add this, not add, subtract this number from Goldie to see what the difference is. How much longer does Goldie sleep than Tommy? But I can't do that if I don't have the denominator matching Goldie's. So I'm going to multiply, because I know that whatever I multiply this by, my denominator is going to be 10. Right? I love these kinds of problems where we think, okay, what times 5 equals 10? Right? We can also look at this as what divided by 10 gives us 5. Right? Well, we know it's 2. And we know whenever we do it to the bottom, we always have to do it to the top. Because 2 over 2, 2 halves, 2 seconds equals 1 whole. Right? So let's finish the math. We are now converting just our fraction. We are not multiplying 2 times 14, right? So 3 times 2 is 6. So now we have 14 6/10. Do the denominators now match? Absolutely, they match. So what we can do now is we can get ready to subtract. So what I'm going to do is always I'm putting the bigger number ahead of the smaller number. Because remember, I can't take away the bigger number from a smaller number. We haven't started learning about negatives yet. Now, here is where our step-by-step guide has gone through. We identified the common denominator, which is 10. That's a really cool thing, right? Goldie's denominator was already 10, and we know that 5 and 10 are related. So we changed to make sure that their denominators are the same, are in common. Now is where we are going to separate whole numbers from the fractions, right? Now, remember what I just said. We have to have our bigger number ahead of our smaller number. But this is going to be a little tricky. I'm anticipating something tricky coming up. So I'm going to separate and pull out my whole numbers and separate my fraction. So I'm going to start by saying 16 minus 14. And then I know that I'm also going to be subtracting 3/10 from 6/10. Does anyone notice a problem? Yeah, we can't subtract 6 from 3. So this is an exciting part that I love, because this reminds me of regrouping in subtraction. Well, I know that 16 is made up of quite a few. There, I can pull one, I can subtract 1 from 16. 1 whole from 16. And that 1 whole, we're going to have 15 here. We can still do that. And I want to add this 1 whole over here, because we know that because of our reciprocity, that whatever we can take away here, we can add it over here. But hold up. I'm not going to add this whole number. I'm going to actually say, well, I know that this 1 is the same as 10 over 10. Did you catch that? This 1 is the same as 10 over 10. So if I add 3/10 plus 10/10, what's that going to give me? 13/10, right? 13/10 is equivalent to 1 3/10, yeah? Can't see that. I wrote a little sneaky little note up here for myself, right? I know that 13 over 10 is the same as 1 3/10. So when I come back down to take a look, well, I can tell that this is going to, I'm going to add that up, okay? So that's actually not going to be 3/10 plus 10/10. It's going to be 13/10. Okay, I can do some subtraction now. So what is 15 minus 4? 15 minus 4, right? And if I want to make sure that this is now accurately shown, I'm going to now write this like that. 15 minus 4 equals 1 whole. What is 13 minus 6? 13 minus 6. 13 minus 6. Some quick math. 13 minus 6 is 7/10. So now I just need to add up these two together, which I know sounds kind of funny, but we're not subtracting these two numbers. We're not subtracting a fraction from a whole number. Those are being put together, right? So even though we're subtracting these two numbers and these two numbers, we need to put these together, right? So it's not going to just be 1 with a 7/10 off to the side. It's going to be, our final answer is going to be 1 7/10. And then as mathematicians, we always box our answer. Excellent. Now, this is where things can kind of get interesting, because 1 7/10 is what? We did a lot of math, but what does 1 7/10 represent? What does it represent? Let's go back to our word problem, especially as it relates to our 3 reads. Focus on the question, what is the story problem asking you to answer? What is the story problem asking us to answer? I'm going to go back and look at our story problem. How much longer does Goldie sleep each day? So this fraction doesn't just represent a number, it represents how many hours Goldie slept longer than Tommy. So let's write this out. Goldie sleeps 1 7/10 hours longer than who? Tommy. Those cats and their cat naps. All right. So this is where my answer is represented. Note that in a word problem, it is not enough to just write 1 7/10. In a word problem, it's asking us for an answer to the question, which is how much longer does Goldie sleep each day? Goldie sleeps 1 7/10 hours longer than Tommy. If you would like to come to our small groups, we are going to continue to do some work in there with that strategy. This is a strategy that we will also go over together next week because, as many of you know from attending our morning meeting, we are not going to have our live math YouTube lessons. They are going to be on Zoom next week. Okay, so that concludes our lesson for today. I hope that cleared things up for you. This was my favorite no, and I look forward to seeing you shortly at our small groups. Take care.